My name is Rayan Calloway and I am 26 years old. Last Saturday, I stood on a stage in front of 400 people while my father sat in the third row and told the room, into a live microphone, that I was the biggest disappointment of his life. He laughed when he said it. A few people laughed with him. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stood there and waited. Because I knew something he didn't. I knew that in approximately 90 seconds, the CEO of the largest architecture firm in the country was going to walk through that side door, cross the stage, and put his arms around me in front of every single person my father had ever tried to impress. Before I tell you how we got there, hit like and drop your city below. I want to know where you're listening from. Now let me take you back 19 years to a kitchen table in Hargrove, Ohio, where my father first told me what I was worth. I was 7 years old. It was a Tuesday evening in October, the kind of night where the radiator clicks and the windows fog at the edges. My older brother Marcus had just brought home a math test. 98%. My dad held it up under the kitchen light like it was something holy. "That's my son," he said to no one in particular. "That's how it's done." My test was still in my backpack. 71. I didn't take it out. Marcus was everything my father understood. Straight lines. Clear answers. The kind of intelligence that fits neatly on a page and gets framed on a wall. I was something else entirely. I drew on everything. Notebook margins, paper bags, the back of church bulletins. I saw shapes in things other people walked past. A water tower looked like a giant chess piece. A parking garage looked like it was trying to become something better and running out of time. My father called it daydreaming. He said it like it was a character flaw. By the time I was 10, the pattern was settled. Marcus got the questions at dinner. Marcus got the college brochures left casually on the counter. I got the suggestions. Have you thought about something more practical, Ryan? You can't pay rent with drawings. My mother would glance at me from across the table with something in her eyes that wasn't quite apology and wasn't quite agreement. It was somewhere in between, and that was almost worse. I kept drawing anyway. On everything. Always. Have you ever been made to feel like the thing you love most about yourself is exactly what's wrong with you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. In high school, I won a regional design competition. The project was a community center concept for a vacant lot on the east side of Hargrove. I'd spent 3 months on it. Hand-drafted plans, a scale model made from cardboard and wire, a 12-page write-up on how the building could serve 4 different demographics without losing its identity. The judges called it sophisticated beyond your years. They gave me a $500 scholarship and a certificate in a thin silver frame. I brought it home on a Friday afternoon. My dad looked at it for about 4 seconds. Marcus got into Ohio State that same week. Full academic scholarship. The certificate went on the counter. It was in the recycling bin by Sunday. I don't think he even knew he'd thrown it away. That was somehow the part that stayed with me longest. Not the malice. The indifference. I applied to architecture school anyway. Got into the Harmon Institute on a partial merit scholarship. My father's response was measured and precise the way a closed door is precise. "If you need money, you can ask Marcus." He said it once and never brought it up again. I worked 3 jobs my first 2 years. Tutoring on weekday evenings. A restaurant on weekend mornings. A printing shop on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons where I learned more about paper and scale and proportion than I ever expected. I was tired in a way that felt structural, like fatigue baked into the foundation. But I kept going. I didn't know what else to do. My 3rd year, a professor named Dr. Elaine Sorrell changed everything. She was in her early 60s, small, with short silver hair and reading glasses she wore pushed up on her forehead unless she actually needed them. She had a habit of walking the perimeter of the room while students presented their work, never sitting, always watching from a different angle. Most students found her intimidating. I found her honest, which was rarer. After a midterm review, she asked me to stay behind. She set my project on the desk between us and looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "You think in systems, Ryan. Most students your age think in objects. There's a difference. Objects are what a building looks like. Systems are what a building does to the people inside it and around it and years after it's built." She tapped the corner of my blueprint. This is systems thinking. Don't let anyone flatten that out of you. I drove home that night with her words sitting in the passenger seat like a person. Nobody had ever described what I did as thinking. Just drawing. Just daydreaming. Just impractical. Dr. Sorrell used the word thinking and something shifted in me that I'm not sure I can fully explain. I just know I stopped apologizing for my process after that night. If someone ever said one thing that made you believe in yourself when nobody else did, I want to hear about it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time, because this story is about to turn in a direction I still don't fully have words for. I graduated with honors. Got hired by a mid-size firm in Columbus doing commercial renovation work. Steady, solid, not particularly inspired. But I was learning the business side of the industry, how projects actually get funded and approved and built, and that education was worth more than I realized at the time. 2 years in, I submitted a proposal to a national urban design competition sponsored by Calloway Vance Group, one of the most respected architecture and development firms in the country. The prompt was a revitalization concept for post-industrial urban corridors. I worked on my submission for 4 months. Nights mostly. Weekends. I kept thinking about that vacant lot in Hargrove. About what it looked like when I was 10 and what it could become if someone decided it mattered. I didn't tell my father I'd entered. I didn't tell anyone in my family. 6 weeks after the submission deadline, I got a call from a woman named Claire at Calloway Vance. "Your proposal has been selected as a finalist," she said. "We'd like to invite you to present at our annual industry summit in Chicago." 5 finalists. 1 award. The presentation is open to registered attendees. I booked my flight that evening. Then I made the mistake of telling my parents at Sunday dinner. My dad's response was immediate and effortless. "Calloway Vance?" He said the name like he was identifying a piece of furniture. "They're not going to pick some kid from Columbus over the firms they already work with. It's a networking event, Ryan. They invite young people to fill seats." He went back to his food. My mother asked if I wanted more bread. Marcus, to his credit, said good luck. He meant it. I drove home that Sunday night on the interstate with the windows down even though it was cold. I needed the noise. I needed something louder than the voice in my head that was already starting to agree with my father. I didn't let it. The summit was held at the Meridian Center in downtown Chicago. High ceilings, marble floors, the kind of room that was built to make people feel like their work mattered. 400 people registered. Industry leaders, municipal planners, developers, journalists covering the architecture beat. The 5 finalists were each given 12 minutes to present. My father came. I hadn't invited him. He'd called my mother, and she'd mentioned it, and he'd decided it was worth the drive. I found out 2 hours before I went on. He was sitting in the 3rd row with my Uncle Dennis. He'd worn his good blazer. The gray one he saves for funerals and job interviews. He looked smaller in that room than he did in our kitchen. I noticed that and then I let it go because I needed my mind somewhere else. The first 2 presentations were strong. The 3rd was exceptional. I was 4th. I walked to the podium. 12 minutes. I'd practiced 43 times. I knew every slide, every transition, every pause. I started speaking and the room went quiet in the way that means people have stopped thinking about other things. Then I heard it. Someone in the third row, not loudly, but audibly in a moment between my sentences, leaned to the person beside them and said, "That's my son." His voice had that quality it gets when he's performing for an audience. And then, the part one will never fully unhear, biggest disappointment I ever had, but at least he cleans up well. He chuckled. Dennis chuckled. Two people nearby shifted uncomfortably. I heard every word. I kept going. I finished my presentation. The room applauded. I stepped back from the podium. My heart was doing something irregular and I stood very still and breathed through it. The moderator thanked the finalists and announced that James Vance, co-founder and CEO of Calloway Vance Group, would present the award. I didn't know James Vance had been in the room. I learned later he'd slipped in during the second presentation and stood at the back. He walked to the stage from the side door. Gray-haired, unhurried, the kind of man who moves through rooms like he's already decided he has enough time. He took the microphone. He said he wanted to speak about the winner before announcing the name. He talked for 3 minutes about systems thinking. About the difference between architects who design objects and architects who design consequences. He said the winning proposal didn't just answer the prompt. It asked a better question. Then he said my name. I walked back to the podium. James Vance extended his hand. I shook it. And then, in a way I was not prepared for, he pulled me in and put his hand on my shoulder and said quietly, close enough that the mic didn't fully catch it, "This is the kind of work we've been waiting for. Welcome." The room stood up. I looked out at 400 people on their feet and then, because I couldn't help it, I looked at the third row. My father was standing too. His hands were coming together slowly, like he was still deciding whether to clap. His face was doing something I'd never seen it do in 26 years. It wasn't pride exactly. It was something more complicated. The recognition of a calculation that had been wrong for a long time. I didn't smile at him. I didn't need to. The reception afterward lasted 2 hours. James Vance introduced me to 3 people who would become professionally important in the years that followed. My father found me near the end of the evening. He was holding a glass of water he hadn't touched. He said, "I didn't know you were that serious about it." I looked at him for a moment. "I've always been this serious, Dad." He nodded. He didn't have anything to add. I didn't press him. Some silences are more useful than anything that could be said inside them. We drove back separately. I stopped at a rest area outside of Gary, Indiana, and sat in my car for a while with the engine off. Not crying. Not celebrating. Just sitting with the fact that the thing I'd been told my whole life was impractical had just been called the kind of work we've been waiting for, by the person with the most authority in the room. Dr. Sorrell called me the next morning. Someone had sent her a photo from the summit. She didn't say much. Just, I knew. I always knew. The line went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Now you know too. My father and I don't have an easy relationship. I don't think we ever will. He's a man who measured love and outcomes he understood, and I kept producing outcomes he didn't have a category for. That's not cruelty. It's a kind of limited vision, and limited vision isn't the same as not caring, even if it does the same damage. We have dinner sometimes. Holidays mostly. He asks careful questions now, the way you ask questions about a subject you're still learning. I answer them. It's not warm the way I used to need it to be. But it's honest, and I've come to believe that honesty is what respect actually looks like when sentiment runs out. I work at Calloway Vance now. Have for 2 years. I'm leading a project in Pittsburgh, a mixed-use development on a former steel site that I keep describing to my team as a building that should know what it replaced. I think about Hargrove sometimes. The vacant lot. The water tower. I think about what Dr. Sorrell said. Systems, not objects. She was right. The building isn't the point. What the building does to the people who walk past it every day for the next 50 years, that's the point. What it says about what a place decided it was worth becoming. That's the question I'm always trying to answer. My father never really understood what I was doing. He understood the award. He understood the firm name on my business card. He understood those things because they had numbers attached and numbers were his language. But the thing that made me worth anything in that room in Chicago had nothing to do with numbers. It had to do with a 7-year-old kid who drew on everything and couldn't explain why and kept going anyway. That kid is still in every set of plans I draft. I made sure of that. If you're listening to this and someone in your life has defined you by what they couldn't understand about you, I want you to hear this. Their inability to see you is not evidence of your limits. It is evidence of theirs. The work you do quietly, seriously, without permission, that work has weight. It accumulates. And one day, in a room you can't yet picture, someone with the authority to say so is going to call it exactly what it always was. That's not a guarantee. Nothing is. But it's possible. I'm proof that it's possible. I have one question for you before you go. Who in your life saw something in you before you could see it in yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know. If this story stayed with you, share it with one person who needs to hear it today. And if you're not subscribed yet, I'd be glad to have you here for the next one.